Hello all, and for this video we are going to be looking at a bunch of information and data today. So the purpose of this video is that I have been with KSDK for about a little over 9 months now actually, and about for the last 5 months I've actually been looking at the data and demographics we're having because it's a very interesting time. So currently at KSDK, which is a news station in St. Louis, actually one of the oldest ones in fact, we are feeling the major shift in change when it comes to how news stations are producing content. So in 2019, obviously, we have about 1 million to 1.1 million viewers every night that are watching our programs. However, this is a much smaller number than it used to be in the past. In fact, incredibly much smaller than what it used to be. So taking in this number, we are seeing what the specific demographic that I will be talking about in this is going to, and how we can change it in the content using the data and reflecting what else is going on within and outside this news station. So before we begin, I should let you know that, my purpose, I am a promotions producer, and what that means is that I make marketing content. So I literally make billboards, intros and outros for TV shows we have here, all the graphics we have for a lot of the TV shows here, music, bus wraps, you name it, including social media videos and YouTube videos and social media advertising, which is very important to what we are going to be talking about. My purpose for this is understanding the data that we are about to go over and how I can kind of go in the direction that the data suggests I go into. So before we go into this, we should say that the goal is to make the station as profitable as possible. When I started this high focus of looking at demographics for the station, I specifically looked at the female 35 to 55 demographic, which is our most popular demographic, both historically and right now, as well as online and on air. So, looking this information, our main goal would be to focus on that demographic to bring our views, our ad revenue, both on and off the air, to be as high as possible. Currently, internally, our main focus is our ranking push. So there are a few other news stations in St. Louis. There's really only 3 news stations, but you can technically count 5, even though the other 2 are much smaller. But basically you have KMOV, us KSDK, and then you have Fox 2. And actually, most recently, about a year ago, Fox 2 started taking the lead. We used to be the lead in the 10 p.m. and in the morning show, which is 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. With our main demographic and just our general audience in general. So as of last time in February, the main focus was to make social media videos in hopes that it would drive us to become going from last in ranking to second in ranking, basically beating KMOV out of the ranking and making them dead last instead of us. So what we did is that we picked about 5 specific promotable topics or I should say stories in February for our nightly newscast, and I made specific social media videos for them. And what we found in the data is that they reached about 10,000 different people, and only about a quarter of the people they reached were of the main demographic we were reaching. And in addition to that, the main information on this data is that we saw that only about, I'm looking at the number right now, this is about 3% of the people that actually watched our social media videos that were kind of previewing our 10 p.m. big topic news stories were watching it through. So this was a little discouraging, and we also found that we only had about a 1.1 rating last time, which is about ratings aren't generally done with numbers. It's a percentage of people that are actually watching your content that you choose, but essentially that is a very poor rating, and I would say that's probably only around 10,000 households actually watching that if you were to actually adjust the numbers. So in February you had those, and what we found in our messaging and the topics that we're promoting, they were really focused on kind of concerning stories. So they were meth houses. Basically, there were houses that people were making meth in while other people were gone. You had child abduction stories that we were also focusing on, and then we were also focusing on sex offender stories. I know, great stuff, but obviously it gives awareness to the general public, and it makes for compelling news stories, especially to our main demographic, which seem to be concerned with the well-being of their family for being in that female to 35 to 55 age range. So what I would say is that the most major influences on this demographic are essentially what happens in their day-to-day life. So looking at the data, we found that females in this age range were actually typically living in households that made about over $100,000 per year. They were watching actually more of the morning show than the night show. They were mostly stay-at-home moms, and so some of the major influences on this were family and personal benefit issues is what we would say that we're finding. Obviously that demographic, they are actually extremely huge on Facebook, but also growing at the time. We found that about 60% of that female demographic is actually on Instagram as well. And this is very important because we actually, as I go to how our May campaign has been going, we will see how we change our campaign in this area. So the specific content we were making for Instagram and Facebook were these social media videos originally, which were essentially just text, white text with big bold yellow letters. They were drawing attention that you commonly see. And so what we were, obviously we're seeing that this audience was on, mostly Facebook and on Instagram. So the idea was the best way to reach this audience was doing so. However, the results weren't quite as what we were looking for originally. In addition to this information, the reputation of our brand hasn't been the best. As of lately, there are contract issues going on, and there's Turnoff KSDK, which is by the contractors that work here. There's a contract issue going around. So that's a pretty big issue. And then also there is some other issues going around with how the media is being treated in general, whether that is correct or incorrect. The media is highly criticized at the moment, and journalists are very antagonized by the public eye. I would also say that we are currently also working on a lot of community service work. I've actually been tasked with creating a lot of community service videos and charity work with our community manager, going out in Ferguson and North and East St. Louis to shoot video to show that we are, working with these charity organizations to help people in that. So this is actually something we're working for to help our brand. However, with this, you should also keep in mind that we aren't generally working with our main demographic, actually. Our main demographic typically lives in a nicer household, and we are doing this work in much lower income areas. So with that said, I would like to talk about what our current, how we've been doing currently, how we have changed our kind of focus and what it originally was, and how it is performing personally. So we have actually been doing much better recently. This has actually been a much better month for us. So currently, with that demographic, we've actually been doing about twice as better. We've been hitting about 2.1 ratings, which is much better than, literally twice as better as what we were doing in February. And we've had a steady gap among surpassing KMOV. What we have changed in our kind of content we've been producing, not only in studio and out of studio, in studio on TV, we've actually been promoting more positive stories, cooking stories on our morning show on Today in St. Louis, health benefits, as well as inspiring stories that are more positive. So it's been a lot of more positive news coverage. On our 10 p.m. and there's been a lot of coverage of the St. Louis Blues and covering, the excitement of sports. So even though our main demographic is, female, and you wouldn't typically think that female were to be into sports, we actually found that, lots of females in the St. Louis area are really into sports, and especially into blues right now, because of what's going on with the games at the moment. I'm actually not a real big sports guy, but even it has been a major deal, especially dealing with a news working environment. So, outside of the studio, we no longer make videos. Many, like I said, the vast majority were not watching all of our videos. Instead, what they were doing, they would scroll, it would autoplay, and they'd be like, I don't like this, and they would just scroll past it. So what we've been doing is that we've been making these special social media images where it's just kind of a picture of our talent with a quote, and it says "Watch tonight," and they've actually been receiving tons of interaction, tens of thousands of likes and many comments as well. So this interaction is absolutely what we looked for. We had very few interactions with the social media advertisement videos that we've had. So with this said, I can say that campaigning for the specific demographic, we are on the platforms that you want, that we are looking for. We found the target audience that is clearly helping us, and we have found a way that not only the content that they've enjoyed, we've been able to advertise that, we've been able to advertise it in a way that they enjoy it and they find it accessible, and they don't have to feel like it is a chore, like just a video with a bunch of text in it. So moving forward, I think we can, say that how social media and the internet is obviously a growing thing. Currently at the station, we have a major focus on making stories on social media platforms solely. So I've actually pitched a couple stories, and we've been having many meetings about how we're making specific stories that only go on social media. So just for an example, I actually pitched two stories. One was on it's called I Saw Someone Die, and we would essentially be interviewing people in the St. Louis area that have seen someone die. So whether it's a doctor that saw a very story-worthy disease that would maybe tell someone, it could be a story about someone dying on the streets, or death is all around us. And I actually came up with this story while I was going hiking one weekend, because I was going hiking with my partner, and we saw this thing that warned us, hey, someone's died here. And we thought, and I've thought about it very interestingly, and I actually went hiking because she isn't really into hiking. So it would, females are kind of in, it would be kind of a 4-quadrant story idea that I think would be very compelling. In addition to that, I was thinking of a health show as well, whether it was yoga, infrared saunas, CBD shops, very just making sure that the content's interesting. It's something that you would normally see. In addition to this, we are actually focusing on podcasts. It has been an insane focus. They've had company-wide meetings at our station trying to focus on podcast ideas and what they want to do. And we actually have a podcast going on right now that I've actually helped quite a lot get up and going, called Abby Eats, which is one of our reporters, Abby Larico, is making a food podcast and is very NPR-ish, and we are hoping to, maybe take a step back of making television be our primary focus, and actually having this whole new internet platform that is obviously raising every day in interest being our main focus in adapting to that. So with that said, with the data that we are seeing, it's kind of correlating with this idea, and it is a very exciting time actually to work in news, despite you thinking it being a dead industry, or the vast majority of people thinking it's a dead end industry. It's actually in the form of adapting, and it is very interesting at the moment.